Good evening. Today we're learning Maseches Yevamos Daf Kuf Yud Aleph, and we're starting about 12 lines from the bottom, 3 lines before the wide lines in Kuf Yud Amud Beis. And we've been learning a complex sugya, one about a man who was married to 2 Yevamos who were katanos, and different iterations in the Mishnah. This Mishnah is found on the bottom of Kuf Yud Amud Aleph, and in that Mishnah, one of the iterations is now quoted here, which is katana v'chareshes. If a man is married to 2 women, each of them have their own inadequacies. You have a katana who's not a bardas yet, but she might be. You have a chareshes who is not a bardas and never will be. Each of them with their own weaknesses. And let's go through how to understand this. Amar Rav Nachman, Ashkachte Rav Ada bar Ahava. We found Rav Ada bar Ahava, Ula Rav Chana Chasnei, and his son-in-law Rav Chana, Diyasve, they were sitting, Ve'kamikvu akvisa b'shuka de pumpadisa. From the word mikvah, they made a gathering, like that's what a water does. It's mikaveh, it gathers things in. They were gathering people to learn in the shuk of Pumpadisa, a public shiur. Amre, here's what they were teaching. Haditznan, when our Mishnah says, Ketana v'chareshes, ein bias achas min poter sarasa, that if a man has 2 Yevamos fall to him, one of whom is a Ketana and one of whom is a chareshes, so then if he does yibum to either one of them, it doesn't help the other person. Of course, as mentioned, each of these women have their own inadequacies. Hani mili, when is this true? That's true when the brother who is getting these 2 Yevamos, that's when he's a pikeach, because if he's a pikeach, we don't know what his point of preference is. Would he prefer a ketana or would he prefer the chareshes? Says the Gemara, maybe he would say the ketana is preferred, because generally speaking, a girl who is 11, she'll become 12 and she'll then be a bardas. That's a wonderful appeal. And the chareshes the chareshes, she might already be a gedola and therefore be a basbia. Aval, if the husband who got the women as yevamos, if the yavam was not a pikech, aval nafla me'achav cheresh from the cheresh husband, so then Vadai bechareshes nichale, for sure, he has a preference for the chareshes. Why? First of all, the basbia, she's old enough, and second of all, the basmine, the yavam and the yavama are both charashos, and that seemingly it's a strange assumption of the Gemara, I think, but I think the Gemara does assume it that a cheresh would prefer to be with a chareshes as opposed to a regular, healthy, normal person. And then Rav Nachman pushes back on that. But Amar lahu. I said back to them, that's not correct. That really will have an element of safek no matter what. We don't know how either of these women could pater the other through yibum. So the Gemara says, Ketzat taknasan, what should they do? Are they stuck forever? How? Because all the Mishnah says is that, let's just look back at the language of the Mishnah. All the Mishnah had said is on the very first long line, we'll see the repeat of these words, Katana v'chareshes, that ein bias achas min poter sarasa. So what should they do? Rav Chizda gives an answer. Amar Rav Chizda, Amar Rav, kones hachareshes umotzia beget. He marries the chareshes and then divorces her, and then viktana tamtina chetagil v'tachlot, and she has to remove both of them. And again, because of the elements of suffix that exist here, we therefore are not allowed to marry either of these women, and they both have to be removed from him as Yevamos. The first one, he has to first marry the chareshes and then give her a get. He can't do chalitza. She's not subject to chalitza. And the ketana as well, they should not be married, but there's nothing he can do right now, and they have to wait until she becomes a gedola, and then they get divorced. Now, Rav Chizda, Rav Chizda, Shma mina, he makes an inference. Rav Chizda, who was a Talmud of Rav, look at the line before. Amar Rav Chizda, Amar Rav. So Rav taught us the din that the way to get out of this double Yevama situation is by marrying and then divorcing the chareshes, and by waiting till the ketana becomes a gedola. And Rav Chizda, he kind of unearths what's going on in Rav's mind. Amar Rav Chizda, 3 lines from the bottom on Kuf Yud Amud Beis. Shma mina, what can we learn from Rav? Shmamina, that Kosava Rab, that when it comes to the chareshes, she's kinuya umishuyeres. There's a type of kinyan called kinuya umishuyeres. That means that there is a kinyan, but there's something left over in the kinyan. In other words, it's not 100% of a kinyan. It's a kinyan, but it's not 100% of a kinyan. But in regards to the ketana, kinuya ve'ena kinuya. There we have a pure suffix of whether or not there even is a kinyan bichlal in regards to their relationship. It says the Gemara, and this is where things get sophisticated and will be sophisticated until the end of the page. Of the next page, unfortunately, it says the Gemara. I didn't mean that sounded very. It was only a line. The isal kadaitach, that it was the opposite. If you might have thought that chareshes wasn't knuya mishuyeres, but was rather knuya ve'ena knuya, a pure suffix of the cheresh, we just don't know. And against Rav, that katana knuya mishuyeres, the katana is really partially a kinyan, not a suffix, but partially a kinyan. So then chareshes amai kones umatzia beget. Then if in fact it was the chareshes who, in this havamina that we're going to reject, that we want to say she's knuya ve'ena knuya, then how could he marry her? Why would he marry her and then divorce her like we just recommended? Top of Kuf Yud Aleph Amud Aleph. After all, what should be done? Teisiv gabe mimanavshach. She should be able to stay with the husband no matter what happens. Why? What is the mimanavshach for the chareshes to stay with the husband if we assume that the chareshes is Kinuya ve'ena kinuya, that she has a suffix of a relationship? Kinuya, if in fact that there really is a marriage there, then ha kinuya, then they're married. Ve'ilav kinuya, if in fact they're not married, then ha nachris ba'alma, then she's a nachris ba'alma, and there's no need for her to be pattered as a tzara because she's nothing, because there was no kinyan at all in the marriage. And if you want to say that this assumption is true, and therefore the assumption of the mimanavshach, if you want to say that we could use this mimanavshach not only by a chareshes but also by a ktana, how so? That ktana as well. Why does Rav Chizda Amar Rav say that we should wait until the katana becomes a gedola and then chalitza should be done? The same logic can be used by her as well, by the katana. Teisiv gabe, she should be able to stay by him because iknuyahi, haknuyahi. If in fact there is a kinyan, then great. And ilav knuyahi, and if she is not kinuya, then nuchrisa be'almahi, then she's considered nuchrisa be'alma. And in Cain, if that's true, if we apply this logic as we have painted it here, then chareshes b'mai tepuk, then the chareshes would be absolutely stuck. Because she has this mimanavshach, then there's no way for her to ever get out of this marriage. She is just stuck. And then the case in our Mishnah from the bottom of Kuf Yud Amud Aleph, where we talk about the katana and the chareshes, then the chareshes will always be stuck. And we know that that's not true because our Mishnah, Rav Chizda and Amar Rav already gave an answer. And we already know that this is correct because Amar Rav Sheshes hachanami mistabra kedukamatarets Rav Chizda al liba de Rav. We in fact do agree with the shita of Rav here that we know that the chareshes will get married and subsequently divorced, and the katana, when she becomes a gedola, that she will have chalitza. How do we know this to be true? 8 lines down, Brisa, the Tanya. The Brisa writes, Shnei achin nesuo shtei achayos yisomos. We have 2 brothers who married 2 sisters who were yisomos. Kitana v'chareshes. If in fact, in this case, this is different than our Mishnah, even though they're both Ketana v'chareshes. In our case, the Ketana v'chareshes were not sisters. Here they are sisters. It says the Gemara, Ketana v'chareshes, if Meis Baila Shel Ketana, remember they're brothers married to sisters, if the husband who was married to the Ketana dies, what happens to the Ketana? Then chareshes yotza beget, the Ketana tamtenat shetagdil v'tachlot. That if the husband of the Ketana dies, the Ketana really should fall to the other husband. So, but again, there's a lack of capacity with the Ketana and with the Chareshes as Yevamos, and their sisters-in-law, they're sisters, so that would be another problem. And so then the Chareshes is Yotze Beget, the Ketana Tamtinat Shetagdil L'Tachlit, they both have to be removed. Meis Baila Shel Chareshes, if the husband of the Chareshes dies, so then Ketana Yotze Beget, the Chareshes Asur La'olam. The Brisa continues, V'im Ba Al HaChareshes, if he did something wrong, this man, the husband who is still alive, if he was intimate with the chareshes, no sem la get behosira. This is usher, but if he did so, then she gets a get and she is then freed. And now we have to analyze this brisa. Amris, like we said earlier in the name of Rab, that bishlam acharoshes kinuya mishuyeres, that a chareshes has a partial kinyan, and ketana kinuya ve'ena kinuya, and a ketana only has a suffix of a kinyan, so there's partial kinyan versus suffix of a kinyan. Mishum hachi, it's because of this distinction, because of Rav's initial understanding that a chareshes is kinuya mishuyeres, therefore, mishum hachi dechibal chareshes no sen la get v'hosra. What's the logic? The amris miman of shach. We have a svara that would definitely say that she should get a get and be freed. Iktana kinuyahi, if in fact if the Ketana is Kenuyahi, then the other wife is Nafka Mishum Achos Isha. If in fact there was a kinyan from the sister who's young, then the other sister is exempt because of Achos Isha, no matter what. And Ilav Kenuya, and if the Ketana was not considered to have actually been married, then her sister can do Yibum because there is no Achos Isha Ilav Kenuya, then Shapir Miyabim. That makes sense. And the line of Rav that a Chareshes is a partial kinyan, it's a Kenuya Mishuyeres, then that makes sense. Ella, first of the very long lines on Kuf Yud Aleph Amud Aleph, Ella Amris, not like Rav. If you wanted to say like the Gemara's, we reject it, but if the Gemara said like maybe we should reverse the types of kinyanim, and maybe Ella Amris Chareshes Kenuya ve'ena Kenuya. If you want to say that Chareshes isn't a partial kinyan, but it's a Safek kinyan, and Ketana is a Kenuya Mishuyeres, and the Ketana has a kinyan that is a partial kinyan. If that's true, kibal chareshes. If in fact there was tashma shamita with the chareshes, amai no sein get v'hosra. Why would it help that she the chareshes who was violated should then get a get and be freed? Havila biapsula or biapsula lo patra. It can't be that that's the case that she'd be free, because if there is biapsula, then she's not free. Yet our Mishnah seems to say that she's free. So how then is it possible?
She's able to accept that as chareshes.
It's like a country,
Well,
what?
what?
And that's where we can't get it back.
Oh, that's interesting. They could be Makabel Kinyanim, they can be Kona, they can't be Makna. That's not true.
More than just being
Right.
Kabo.
Yeah, clearly the Gemara assumes it. The question is what the halachic mechanism is. I didn't, of the many things that crossed in my mind today, that was one of them. Yeah, exactly. On a Sunday afternoon with a barbecue. Yeah. So the Gemara says that this chareshes who was violated, well, how does her get work at all? After all, havila biapsula, not that how does the get work, but why is she free? Biapsula lo patra, says the Gemara. I have a perfect answer for you. Hamani, who's the author of our brisa, where it says that he was ba on the chareshes. Hamani, that's Reb Nechemia. The Omar, Reb Nechemia says biapsula is poteres michalitza. Wow. So there is no chalitza required because we have a precedent in halacha. The precedent in halacha is Reb Nechemia. Reb Nechemia says that when the chareshes is violated, that's not violation. It might have been consensual. It doesn't matter because at the end of the day, it does pater her because biapsula is going to pater her from chalitza. Says the Gemara, that's a great response, but it's not really thorough because in order for this to make sense with Reb Nechemia, then the whole brisa of Reb Nechemia has to fit perfectly, and it doesn't. Says the Gemara, 4 lines into the wide lines, Reb Nechemia, if in fact you're answering that our Gemara is speaking about biapsula, and biapsula is poteres mechalitza, well, ema seifa. Then the rest of the brisa of Reb Nechemia doesn't seem to fit. What does the rest of Reb Nechemia's brisa say? It says as follows. If a man is married to 2 yesomos, 2 girls whose father isn't alive anymore, she was married to them by a brother and or mother, and these 2 girls are Ketana v'chareshes umeis, and the girls that are married to him are 2 women, obviously not related to one another. One is a Ketana, one is a chareshes, and then the husband dies, and the Ketana and the chareshes fall to one of the remaining brothers. So ba yavam ala Ketana, let's say that the yavam does something wrong, and he's intimate with the Ketana, v'chazaru bala chareshes, and then he's with the chareshes. Oh, sheba achib ala chareshes, or if one of the brothers is intimate only with the chareshes, ne'esu shtehen alav, then both wives, the wife and the co-wife, they're both going to be forbidden to the yavam. Ketzad taknas, and how do we get them out of this scenario? Remember that we're in the brisa of Reb Nechemia right now. Chareshes yotzeis beget. That when it comes to the chareshes, she can receive a get, and the ketana, she has to wait until she becomes a gedola, and then she gets chalitza. Now, if you want to say like Rav said on the bottom of Kuf Yud Amud Beis when we started today's Gemara, if you want to say bishlama that chareshes is kenuya u'mishuyeres, that a chareshes has a partial kinyan, and ketana, her kinyan is defined as kenuya ve'ena kenuya, she has a suffix of a kinyan. Then you also say v'rabbananhi, but we don't paskin like Reb Nechemia, who says that biapsula is poteres. We paskin like the Rabbanan that biapsula is ena poteres. Well, mishum hachi tamtinat shetagdil v'tachlots. Then there we can say that there should be chalitza. The dilma kadim uval chareshes bereisha v'havila bia diktana biapsula. then we could understand our Gemara. But if you say we hold like Reb Nechemia, then the second part of the brisa, the Seifa, doesn't fit, because Ha'amar bi psula patra, and that is not how he would have held in our Gemara. It must be that our case is Rabbanan, he's Shmamina. There really are cases like the Rabbanan, and our Mishnah is and our Gemara is very difficult to understand because of that, because I should say that what happens now is that the Gemara's question is very good. We had asked a question 4 lines into the wide lines, that Havile bi psula lo patra, which is in fact the sheet of the Rabbanan, and therefore our question, our rejection of the Gemara was very good. So then, where are we now? We're 6 lines from the bottom. And Amar Ravashi, Beresha Nami Shmamina Derabanan. Actually, we see that for sure we don't hold like Rav Nechemia from another Mari Makom as well. Diktani, how do we know that we don't hold like Rav Nechemia, that Bia Psula is Poteres, and rather we hold like the Rabbanan, that Bia Psula is not Poteres? Because Dikatani, in Bala Chareshes, no sin laget behosra. Belokatani, in Ba'al Haktana, no sin laget behosra. We said it specifically in one case, which was the case of the Chareshes, and not the case of the Ktana, which fits with the Rabbanan better than it fits with Rav Nechemia. Says the Gemara, not a good question. Imishum holo iria, that's not a good argument, because Chareshes, when it comes to a Chareshes, the lesle takanta, when there's really no way to get her out of that marriage, lesle takanta de hetera, where she really doesn't have a good scenario. So what did the Mishnah present? The Mishnah presented katani takanta de isura, that how could she get free if someone was intimate with her? But Katana, the Isle Takanta de Hetera, but a Katana, she can always have Chalitza, and therefore, Lotani Takanta de Isura, and therefore there's not a riot that we in fact hold like the Rabbanon here. So, anyways, Sikum Hadvarim is that Rav taught us a din, that the fundamental character flaw of a Chareshes is that she only has a partial kinyan. Masha'ein Kain, when it comes to a Ktana, she has a suffix of a kinyan, and these are different in Lumdus. One is, the way Rabbi Reznik said it was very beautiful. He says, when it comes to a Chareshes, she's Kinuya Umeshuyeres. She's 50-60% married. It's not 0 and it's not 100. It's 50 or 40. There's elements of her that are there's definitely certain elements of the kinyanim that work. Masha'enkin, when it comes to the katana, it's either 0 or 100. So it's either 0 or 100, which is pure suffix, we don't know, versus 50, 60, 70. It's a different, it's like when you start to gamble, like you look at percentages. Well, do I want to go, it's a high risk, high reward. Do I want to go for the 100%, but the other option is 0? Or am I like a more of a conservative bettor and I'm going to go for the 50, 60%? We do the same thing with our 401ks. They make you fill out that form online. How risk averse are you? Okay, you fill it out, and you fill it out the first time. You're like, and then you're like, no, I got to go back and make it a little bit more conservative. So these are the different types in lumdus. These are the different types of chesronos that exist with a ketana and with a chareshes, and therefore, to the greatest of our abilities, we should marry people who are not in these categories. It solves a lot of problems. Next Mishnah, 2 lines from the bottom, Kuf Yud Aleph, Amud Aleph. If a man was married to 2 young Yesomos girls and he died, and then there is a Yavam, Uba Yavam ala Rishona, he was intimate with one. Both girls have the same chisaron in that they're both ketanos. He's intimate with one, and then he is intimate with the second one. Or another case scenario, Sheba Achiv al Hashniya, there's another brother who is intimate with the second one. As we turn to the top of Kuf Yud Aleph, Amud Beis, we're going to go to the very top line of Kuf Yud Beis Amud Aleph. In those cases, Lo Pasal as Harishona, this does not ruin the first girl, the first katana, and she still is eligible for Yibum. V'chein Beis Charashos, the same would be true with 2 women who are Charashos, who are deaf mutes. What about in this case, if the 2 women who he married were a katana and a chareshes? Similar theme for the day. Says the Gemara, if in such a case there was a katana and a chareshes, then here are some of the permutations of the possibilities. If he's intimate first with the katana and then with the chareshes, or Osheba Achiv al hachareshes, then pasal es katana, then he ruins the first one. Yavam al hachareshes. If a Yavam is intimate first with the Chareshes, and then he's intimate with the Ktana, or another possibility is Sheba Achi Balaktana, then Pasal es Chareshes. What if the 2 people who he was married to was Pikachas v'Chareshes, one girl was perfectly normal, and the other one was a Chareshes, she was a deaf mute, and then Ba Yavam al HaPikachas v'Chazar Ba Chareshes, if he's first intimate with the normal, healthy woman, and then afterwards he's with the woman who's a deaf mute, Or another possibility, he's first intimate with the chareshes, and he's only intimate with her, then lo pasalas apikachas. But if first he's intimate with the chareshes and only later with the pikachas, or then pasalas achareshes. What if the two girls he's married to are a Gedola and a Ketana, and he dies and they fall to the brothers b'yibum? So then similar storylines. If one of the brothers, Shimon, was intimate with the Gedola followed by the Ketana, it doesn't ruin the Gedola. But the other way around, if he's first intimate with the Ketana and then with the Gedola, then pasal Ketana. What does Rabbi Lazar teach us? Same thing he taught us in the Mishnah a couple of days ago on Shabbos. Rabbi Lazar Omer Malamden Aktana Shetamayin Bo. What?
Yesterday, it was not a couple of days ago.
What it feels like a couple of days ago. That's what it feels like. I literally have more gray hair since Friday. Unbelievable. So this is a repetitive din. The Gemara is going to immediately pick up on the fact that we already paskin that we hold like Rabbi Elazar. We said Malamden Aktana Shetamayin Bo, and that whole complex family dynamic is where the Ketana, whose whole marriage is the Rabbanan, so we tell her to do miyun to Shimon, so that Rachel, who fell b'yibum with a zika deoraisa, should be able to perform the mitzvah of yibum. So Amar Rabbi Yehuda Mar Shmuel halacha Rabbi Elazar, v'chein Amar Rabbi Elazar halacha Rabbi Elazar, like we saw. So why does it have it in our Mishnah that way, and why does it have it in the previous Mishnah that way? So a little bit more than a third of the way down on Kuf Yud Aleph Amud Beis, the Gemara says that we needed to have the din of Rabbi Elazar, that we teach a Ketana to do miyun. We needed it twice with tzricha. If we had it in the first case from yesterday, in one case there was no mitzvah sibum. Where you are fulfilling the mitzvah of yibum, maybe we should say they should all have a get. And v'yashmin and behaf, we only had one of the other cases, mishum de gedola ramya kamei, because there's an older sister, aval idach loba, where there is no older sister, tzricha, I might not have thought that we would hold like Rabbi Elazar. And Lamaisa, what that means is that we hold like Rabbi Elazar in all scenarios where it's feasible, and that is that we teach a young girl to do miyun whenever she possibly can. Okay, next Mishnah, halfway down on Kuf Yud Aleph Amud Beis. Last Mishnah for the day, Mishnah and a little bit of Gemara. Yavam katan. Let's say a 9-year-old Yavam, Sheba al Yevama Ktana, Yigdelu Zaim, said they should grow up together. In other words, they wait until they both become Gedolim, and then their marriage takes force midoraisa. Ba al Yevama Gedola, but if you had a Yavam Katan who was with a Yavam Gedola, Tigad Lenu, she should raise him. In other words, she also should stay with him until he's older. Hayavama she'amra besoch shloshim yom lo niv'alti, if there is a Yavama where they technically get married, and she claims that there was no intimacy for 30 days, we then force him to do chalitza, because clearly he's not showing any interest in her. If 30 full days have passed already, then we ask him to do chalitza, but we don't force him to do chalitza. But if he admits as well, then it could be 2 years later. And the Gemara says that if the husband agrees, yes, we've never had tashma shemita, then we force him to do chalitza. Because the Rishonim write that we don't trust her. Something's wrong. After 30 days, we assume that the couple will have been together. 30 days is too long. We assume that a couple will have been together after 30 days. If she didn't make the mecha before 30 days, so then we assume that it's no longer true. It's a running assumption. There's research out now that speaks about this. Happens to use that 1 month as the parameter. I'll just speak b'nekius here, but they say that marriages that are lacking in intimacy once a month are problematic marriages. It's an arbitrary threshold in the secular research, but Klape the Gemara really doesn't embrace the line of 30 days to say that up to 30 days, we trust her to say that there was no tashma shemita. But after that, we can't assume. If he doesn't agree after 30 days, we don't believe that. We assume that they had tashma shemita. Okay. Now, hanoderes hanami yavama. Let's say that a woman, she says, I want no part, I'm not interested at all in my yavam. Now, if it was Bechayi Baila, if she's married, Reuven's married to Rachel, and they're sitting at the Shabbos table one night, and Rachel says to Reuven, I hope you never die, I hate your brother, I'm mudar hana from him. So I don't ever want to part of him. If it's Bechayi Baila, then Kofen Oso Shiachlotz Lo. Wow. Then her words actually take effect. And what that means is that if Rahman al-Islan, Reuven dies and Rachel falls to the to the disliked brother-in-law, the din is that chalitza is automatic. I mean, it has to happen. He's forced to do it. It's kofin. So she doesn't go free. She doesn't go free. She needs chalitza, but we force him to do chalitza, which is a fascinating idea.
What's this gender hanada? Mitzvah slav lehena.
Right, what does it have to do with the mitzvah? It's not about the mitzvah. She hates him.
I understand. She's noder hana. Why does that prevent you? And there's an Yevamos.
Rashi says, the last Rashi before the Gemara lines, it says, Ela shahaya lahem kas zeim zeh. By the way, I'm not sure that the question's a question because he's always allowed to do yibum or chalitza. So it's not a bittul mitzvah yibum to do chalitza. So the Gemara says, like you're implying that, yeah. I mean, minus the fact that if you marry l'shem noy, that forget that. But let's assume in the ideal circumstances, yibum is better. But here, because we know that they have a strong dislike for one another, the Gemara says kofen asoshi achalatzla. Now, what if she said el achar misas baila? Ruvain is being lowered into the grave. She says, over my dead body, I'm not marrying Shimon. No way, hate that guy. So then mevakshin himenu shiach. See, there the Zika already kicked in. So there things are a little bit different because the second that Ruvain dies, she has an immediate Zika to Shimon. All of a sudden, once the Zika kicks in, she's saying, I don't want to marry. It's too late. You're already there. The Zika's there. And we know, we've learned in the Masechta a few times that a husband can do yibum bal korcha. He can even force her into that. So there the Gemara says, because the Zika is in place and because the Yibum is technically forcible, we can't be kofin oso to do chalitza. We're not allowed to do that because the Zika is a Zika deoraisa and her mudar hana is functionally irrelevant. It's too late. She already had the Zika first. And then mevakshin heimen, that's the change of language. We request of him to sheyach chalitza that he should do chalitza. And if her intention when her husband was alive was this, again a little nuance here, then still it would be a bikush that they should do this. Meaning, if she was more specific when her husband was alive to say, if you die and if there is yibum, I don't want to marry your brother. So then even there we do a bikush. But I don't let's get into that. The Gemara is not going to discuss it today, but it may discuss it tomorrow, but I haven't looked at tomorrow's Gemara. But let's get into the Gemara very quickly. The Gemara says, Lema, maybe we should say that Masnisin is deloker Rav Meir. Maybe our Mishnah is not like the Shita of Rav Meir. Why not? Titania, Katan, Uktana, Lo Cholzin, Velo Misyabmin. Directly against our Mishnah. Our Mishnah speaks about Yibum throughout the entire Mishnah. Yet Rav Meir says that there is no Chalitza and there is no Yibum with Ktanim. So then maybe our Mishnah is not like Rav Meir. Says the Gemara, Afilu Tema Rav Meir. First of the very long lines, Kuf Yud Aleph from the base. How could it be that we're even like Rav Meir? Kiyama Rav Meir. When did Rav Meir say that that's the case, that there is no Yibum and no Chalitza with Aktana? That's Gedola Lekatan Aktana Legadol. That's when one, either him or her, when only one of them is a Gadol and the other one's a Katan. The Chad Minayu Bia de Isurahu. There, the bia is on a level of the oraisa. So there he says no yibum, no chalitza. Aval, maybe Rav Meir would agree that katan habal aktana de tarvau ki adadin, that both of them are in the derabanan status. Then lo amar, maybe Rav Meir would not have said his din that there's no chalitza and no yibum. Says the Gemara, that's not possible. Ba'aktani, the Brisa writes, Ba'al Yevama Gedola Tegad Lanu. So Amar Rav Chanina Choza Ba Shiny. The language of Ba here was when he was intimate with her was against. It was not correct what they did, because it says Ba'aktana Ba'al Yevama Gedola Tegad Lanu. So that is also against Rav Meir, because we already had that specifically in our Mishnah. Now we're trying to create a new kimta where Rav Meir, maybe we already had that in our Mishnah, so that can't be Rav Meir. So the Gemara says that it has to be that Ba is shiny. Ba shiny means that Ba means that he was intimate with her. He shouldn't have been. Ba is a language of B'diyevet, not a language of Lechatchila. Says the Gemara, okay, good, but B'hatikad Lenu Kamar, that she should stay married to him. They could be intimate more times than one. You're right, Masnisin Deloki Rav Meir. You're right. Our Mishnah is not like Rav Meir at all, because Rav Meir is of the opinion that a katan and a ktana never have yibum and chalitza. Yet our Mishnah decisively points out that there is yibum and or chalitza many times over with ketana. The Gemara asks a side question, but a very important one, 5 lines into the wide lines. Kari kan lahakim lehakim laachiv shem. The whole pasuk speaks about the mitzvah of yibum in the frame of giving a name to the brother who died. V'hai, this child is a katan, la bar hachihu. How are we fulfilling anything midoraisa? The child is a katan. How can he's not a bar das? How can he fulfill the pasuk's desire of lahakim la'achiv shem? Amar Abaye Amar Kra Yevama Yavo Aleha Koldehu, any age. Okay. Rava Amar, Belav Hachinami Lo Matzis Amris, it still doesn't work. Miika Midi, is there such a scenario that Hashta Asira Le Ulavaser Shaita Sharia? Could it be a scenario that the katan would be usher to do yibum, and then only when he becomes a gadol it would become mutter? That's not possible. If there's a yavam at the moment that the brother dies, where I cannot say, quote unquote, that there's a din of yibum, then we would never allow at a later point for yibum to kick in. The Gemara is arguing from logic here. Is it possible that when a child is a child and he becomes a yavam, that he's not allowed to do yibum? You can't say that, because that violates one of the fundamental rules of Yibum, which is that the moment that Ruvain dies, if Shimon is not available at that moment to be a Yavam, then done. Then there's no Yibum later. So forget about the argument that we said before Mi'ika Midi. Forget that argument. It doesn't matter. If the katan wasn't ready to be a Yavam when his brother died, then the whole thing is a zero. Elamai, it must be that we assume that a child is always ready to be married. Says the Gemara, maybe we should say that a child is not really eligible. Says the Gemara, Amar Kra, not possible. Ben Yom Echad. Unbelievable. Even if it's a very, very young child, the Yibum is conceptually in play. Yes, he's not a Barbia, he's not a nothing. He's not a Ben Shalosh, he's not a Ben Tesha. He has crossed no thresholds other than being alive. That's it. Other than being alive. Okay. And potentially, he's not even a Bar Kayoma yet. Exactly. He doesn't even have the mitzvah pigeon aben. He's not allowed to have bris milah, but that's not because he's not a bar. It's not because he's not a Bar Kayoma. What? What did you say?
There won't be a pigeon on Ben because he's probably not the only brother.
No, that's not true. Yeah, because the Yibum is only through fathers, and Petarechem is always through mothers. Yeah, we have a little more. David, don't close your Gemara yet. You're as excited as I am to close the Gemara. I love you, Hashem and Yevamos. But let's learn a little bit more.
Remember, Phil, you're still better off than Ruben.
I know. It's good that you guys are here. It's good. Says the Gemara, the last two dots on the page, 5 lines from the bottom. Yevamos she'amru b'soch shloshim yom. We spoke about the case in the Mishnah that if a Yevama says that her Yavam wasn't intimate with her for 30 days, and we can force him to do chalitza. Says the Gemara, man tana da'ad slasin yom and moki minish anafshe. Where does this 30-day threshold come from? Rav Yochanan, Rav Meir. The Tanya tainas besulim kol shloshim yom. Divrei Rav Meir. This is a quote from Tosefta Maseches Ksubis. Another 12 days, and we'll be starting Maseches Ksubis Mir Hashem. That if there's a tainas besulim, of course, there's a claim that when a husband marries his wife, he's able to distinguish that she is not a besula and she is in fact a beula. He can tell the difference. There's no hargasha. He can't sense that there's a besulim there. That applies kol shloshim yom divi Reb Meir. But Reb Yossi argued in Omer nistera la'altar that the moment they're alone, we assume that there was something that happened there. Lo nistera, and if they were not ever alone, then afla achar kamashanim, then we would still trust the tainas besulim. So we see from this machlokes that exists in Maseches Ksubis that the threshold of the assumption of Tashmish Hamita is 30 days. Rabba Amar, that's not true. Afilu Tamer Rabbi Yossi. Lav Dafka, that the address for 30 days is Rabbi Meir. It could even be Rabbi Yossi. Ad kan lo ka'amar Rabbi Yossi hasam ela ba'arusaso de gispa. Rabbi Yossi only gave his loose parameters of Nisra altar and lo Nisra aflachar kamashanim only in regards to his arusa, the person who he just married, to gispa. He has very, very strong feelings for her. Every experience, he's paying a lot of attention, so he'll know. When it comes to marrying one's brother, says the Gemara, an interesting psychology, just the top 3 words on Kuf Yud Beis is mivzaz bazis mina. It's awkward. You've been brothers-in-law, potential brother-in-law, sister-in-law, possibly for a long time. It's uncomfortable. Rashi says, bosh heimena, that there is this embarrassment between them, and therefore, maybe Rabbi Yossi would still say that the parameters here are the same, and lav dafka, that it's only Rav Meir. We'll stop right here in Yirtzeh Hashem. Tomorrow night we'll pick up on the top of Kuf Yud Beis at the top line. Wishing you all a beautiful night.